Screech by TarynMcT. Read by Oakshadow5. Chapter 35. Izuku trudged his way to the buses with the rest of the class, only willing to tag along because he knew he'd be able to sleep on the bus. Today was the day the rest of the class was going to be taking their provisional license exam, and Izuku wanted to be there to cheer them on. But really, did they have to get up so early?
Problem child, if you don't hurry up, we're going to leave without you.
Dad teased. Everyone had already boarded the bus while Izuku was standing there, contemplating the merits of morning. Izuku blinked at him and then looked around blankly. Oh. He yawned widely and wobbled his way over to where his dad was standing at the doors of the bus. Carry me? He asked adorably, giving his dad the big eyes he knew he was weak against. Dad only paused for a few moments before sighing in defeat and picking up Izuku, who buried his face into the capture scarf.
You better be awake by the time we get to the exam site. I'm not ruining my reputation by having to carry around an owl.
Izuku snorted at that and hooted in assent. As Izuku drifted off back to sleep, he thought he heard his dad threaten the rest of the class that if they woke them up, he wouldn't let them take the licensing exam. As soon as Izuku agreed to wake up when they got to the exam, Shota knew he was lying. Izuku was going to sleep right through it all, and Shota didn't think there was much that could wake him up. Most of the past 3 weeks had seen Izuku sleepy, nodding off while his ring regrew, but Izuku had mentioned that the closer his ring was to being fully healed, the more he slept and the harder it was to wake up. Hopefully, this meant Izuku would have his wings back in a few days. Getting on the bus with Izuku already falling asleep, Shota flashed a squawk at the class to get their attention.
If any of you Hellions wake up my son,
he stated calmly,
you'll sit out the exam here on the bus. Do you understand me?
All 14 sets of eyes whined at him and nodded.
Good.
Shota then sat on one of the front seats, adjusted Izuku to be in a more comfortable position, and fell asleep as the driver started on their way to the exam site. Surprisingly, the Hellions did stay quiet enough for Shota to sleep through the whole ride, only getting loud when the bus was pulling up to the exam location at the National Dagoba Arena. The students all got off the bus carrying their costume cases and muttering nervously amongst themselves. Shota followed, carrying Izuku, who had only stirred slightly and gripped onto Shota's scarf when he tried to wake him.
Alright, listen up, Hellspawn. If you can pass this test and get your provisional licenses, then you'll be semi-pros.
Shota locked eyes with them briefly.
I expect your best.
Alright, Denki cheered. I can't wait to show off what I've learned. Yeah, let's call it the usual, Kirishima yelled out. On my mark, go plus! Ultra! A kid in a shiketsu had interrupted. Shota was pretty sure he remembered this kid from the recommendation exam. He was the kid that got first place in the obstacle course, beating out Todoroki by barely an inch. You know, one of the other shiketsu students who had followed the kid said, It's very rude to barge into other people's huddles like that, Inasa. I am so very sorry, he yelled out, before bowing so low he had his forehead on the ground. Who is this guy? Denki asked. I do not trust his enthusiasm.
Oh, that's right,
Shota muttered.
Yoarashi Inasa was his name.
Yoarashi looked at Todoroki, and his excitement seemed to fade. You have that same look in your eyes as your father. Shota saw that Hitoshi was about to call him out on his rudeness, but then Todoroki spoke up. I would expect so, yes, as we are related. Yoarashi seemed to get confused at that. That's not what I meant. If you look closely, Todoroki continued. I also have my mother's eyes. You see, this one is grey. Do they teach you anything about genetics at Shiketsu? Or have you not gotten to the particular section yet in the classes? Hitoshi, the ever-faithful shit-stirrer he is, added. I think that's part of the middle school curriculum show. He should definitely have already known that a kid normally has traits from their parents, such as their eyes. Shota had to quickly turn away to keep from snorting at his son's antics, further ruining what was left of his reputation. Shota was able to successfully avoid laughing at Hitoshi. However, by turning his head, he caught sight of the last person he wanted to see. He scowled at the green-haired woman, who brightened up as the Shiketsu students left. Eraser! She called out. I'd know that school anywhere!
Joke,
Shota grumbled.
Please be quiet. My son is sleeping.
Oh, Eraser, he's so cute! She cooed at Izuku. And look, he looks just like the two of us. He could totally be our son. How thoughtful of you to adopt a kid that could pass as ours. So, when are we getting married? Shota let out a long, suffering sigh and shook his head.
Never.
You're such a kidder, Eraser! She laughed loudly, and Shota could see his students were starting to get almost as uncomfortable as he was. They all knew he was already married. Shota was sure of it. Neither he, Hitoshi, nor Izuku were very sad about how much they all adored Hisashi, so if any of 1A didn't know that Shota was married, he'd have to put them through an intense situational awareness training.
I really was not kidding, joke. Now, please, don't wake up my son.
She waved her hand dismissively. He needs to wake up anyways. How else is he going to participate in the exams? Shota glared at her.
He's not. He's here to watch the exams, not to participate.
Now, Eraser, any son of ours is going to be a hero. He needs to at least give the exam a try, she countered. Just as Shota was about to reveal that Izuku already had his provisional license, he felt his son stirring in his arms. Izuku brought one hand up to his eyes to rub away his sleep, while the other arm tightened around Shota lightly. With a quiet hoot, Izuku looked up at the person making so much noise and blinked at her. Aw, Eraser, our son is just perfect. Look at him. I just want to pinch his little cheeks. Joke squealed loudly.
He is not your son. Izuku is my son.
Shota growled at her. Even in a still mostly asleep state, Izuku was able to pick up on Shota's clear annoyance, and he made a joke that was halfway between a hiss and a screech. Leave my dad alone, he slurred, before nuzzling his head back into Shota's scarf and quickly falling asleep again. Shota turned back to his class and gave them a wild glare.
Well, what are you waiting for? There are signs everywhere informing you where to go. If any of you are late, you'll be expelled.
That was all the incentive they needed. All 14 students ran for the direction of their locker rooms to change and get ready for their exams. Hitoshi was with the rest of his class in the arena, waiting for the exam to start, when he noticed that his dad was in the stands with Izuku still clinging to him and fast asleep. He also noticed, however, that Miss Joke was a few seats away from him, and that his dad was looking minutes away from murder. Hitoshi winced and dropped his gaze to Shoto, who had also noticed and was looking at Hitoshi. He is going to be in a bad mood, no matter how many of us pass or fail, isn't he? Shoto asked. Hitoshi nodded in confirmation. I really wish she had taken her class to the other location, Hitoshi muttered. Denki sat next to them and put an arm around Hitoshi's shoulders. Okay, so I know Sensei usually looks like he's about to skin some of us alive, but today he looks even more pissed off. Is it all because of her? Yeah, Hitoshi confirmed. Miss Joke won't accept that Dad's married, and she's even insulted Papa a few times. Not that she knows who he is, she's only ever met him as Hisashi. She claims she's been after Dad since before he met that blonde homewrecker, completely disregarding the fact that they didn't meet until they had already gone pro. Damn, Denki hissed. But wait, didn't they start dating back in the high school days? Yeah, while they were first years. They moved in together right out of high school. They've always been together, and they've always been gay as hell. Dad's never been interested in her, and no one knows where she even got the idea that he was. Whose dog had he kicked in a past life to deserve this torture? Joke just would not leave, having followed him to the arena seats. She had initially sat right next to him, but after he kept moving a few seats away from her every time she followed him, she eventually decided to leave 2 seats between them. Not great, but better than nothing. Shota had noticed Hitoshi and Todoroki glancing up at him nervously, and he was pretty sure his expression matched his mood. He wanted to smooth out his expression, but every time he started, Jock would say something to remind him she was still there. We should go out on a date this weekend.
No.
Come on, you never want to go out with me. How are you going to ever find the time to propose if you never make time for me? She whined.
Simple. I am not going to. I'm already married to the man I love, and you're not him.
Jock replied, but Shota had already started tuning her out again. The exam had started, and like every year before, everyone was targeting his students. The first attack came, and his kids managed to avoid getting tagged out. Shota smirked with pride at how well his students worked together. The second attack looked a little harder to dodge, but the students still managed it. The problem seemed to come with a third attack. That one's mine! Jock cheered, as a black-haired kid in green placed his hands on the ground and caused an earthquake, finally making Shota's kids break formation and separate into groups. It seemed the noise of the earthquake had been too much for Izuku to sleep through, since he shifted on Shota's lap and lifted his head. Blinking and rubbing the sleep out of his eyes, Izuku questioned. What's that sound?
The exam started, kid.
Shota answered, ruffling Izuku's hair. Izuku's eyes widened, and he chirped excitedly. Why didn't you wake me up earlier? I wanted to wish Denki good luck. Shota snorted.
If that boy fails because he didn't get a good luck, then he deserves to fail.
Izuku was in his own seat now, acting like a barrier between him and Joke. Leaning so far forward, Shota almost thought about grabbing his shirt to keep him from tipping over. I'm sure Denki appreciates the vote of confidence, Dad. Oh, Eraser, our son is just the cutest, Joke gushed. Who's Denki? Izuku glanced at Shota with a look that asked if this was really happening, and then turned to Joke. Why are you calling me your son? Because, silly, you're going to be my son. As soon as Eraser finally realizes how he feels for me and marries me, you'll be my kid. Izuku blinked at her for a solid minute before he tentatively asked, Is this some sort of bit? I know your whole persona is based around jokes, so I wouldn't put it past you. Izuku paused long enough for Joke to seem as though she was going to reply, before steamrolling right over whatever she had to say. Because if this isn't a bit, it's highly inappropriate and definitely could be classified as workplace sexual harassment. My dad is already married, Izuku continued. A fact I'm sure he's mentioned to you before, so you are not only harassing him, you're also disrespecting his husband. But I do have one question for you, Miss Joke. Izuku narrowed his eyes at her. What would you think if your roles were reversed? Joke stared at Izuku for a moment before she tilted her head. What do you mean? If there was a woman being constantly harassed by a male coworker, asking her to marry him, go out on dates, ignoring the fact that she was already in a very happy and committed relationship, what would you think if some man decided not to accept the fact that this hypothetical woman has said no? Well, that's easy. No means no. He should get over himself and accept her no, Joke answered quickly. Exactly. My next question, Izuku's voice got cold, is why is it okay for a woman to ignore a man's no, but it's not okay for a man to ignore a woman's no? Because that's what you're doing, Miss Joke. You are ignoring my dad's very clear no. But, what? No? Eraser's just been joking with me. He loves me, she tried to refute. Then why hasn't he corrected me yet? Why did he adopt me with his husband? Why does he even have a husband if he loves you? The answer is, he doesn't. Now, while I'm sure my dad would appreciate it if you left us alone, I would also appreciate it if you would never try to claim me as his son again. Please and thank you. Shota ducked down into his capture scarf to hide the proud smile at his son that had turned into an amused smirk when Joke simply stood up and walked to the other side of the stands, appearing to get a better view of the students. As Izuku sat back in his seat and turned his attention back to the examinees, Shota pulled him into a side hug.
Thanks, Sue,
he muttered into his hair. Shota had his proud smile fully hidden in his capture scarf as the bus made its way back to UA. Each of the 14 students who took the licensing exam passed, even Uraraka and Sato. Those two had potential, and it seems they may have finally understood that if they didn't live up to that potential, Shota wouldn't let them remain in class. Every single one of the students had made him proud today. During the initial event, they had broken up into 4 teams of 3 and 1 team of 2. Asu and Uraraka had worked together, managing some combinations that ended up turning Uraraka into a high-speed projectile for Asui to throw. Meanwhile, Kirishima, Sero, and Ashido managed to work together really well. While Shota hadn't been too surprised at the end results of his students' efforts, Hitoshi and Kaminari had both been surprised they had passed. Kaminari, regardless of all the work he had been putting into his quirk, still occasionally saw himself as an idiot and borderline stupid, regardless of how often his friends said otherwise. At the same time, Hitoshi's confidence occasionally takes a dive when someone new experiences his quirk and calls him a villain. From what he heard after the test, one of the students from the first round called him that after being eliminated. It's a good thing they were eliminated, because Shota would have demanded they be disqualified if he had heard that. Shota looked back at the students. They had all spent so much energy during the exams, and then attempting to convince Shota to stop somewhere on the way back to the school to celebrate, that they had all fallen asleep barely an hour into the drive. Amusingly, it was Izuku who was the only one awake, and he was sitting with his friends, running his fingers through Kaminari's hair as he stared out the window contentedly. Woo! Everyone passed the licensing exam! Yay! They're all semi-pros now! And Izuku shot on Miss Joke! Yes! But anyways, guys, I hope you all enjoyed chapter 35 of Screech, and I see you all next time. Bye!